It's wonderful to be here today with our guests, Mr. Abhiir Bhalla, Mr. Vaibhav Ramani, and Ms. Shivi, Anand, to speak about their work and how it connects to the themes of Festival of Hope at Pathways School Gurgaon. Each one of you brings a very different perspective towards enacting hope. Could you please introduce yourselves very briefly?
Sure, thanks. Hi, so I'm Abhiir, and I've been working as a youth environmentalist for the past 9 years. The cornerstone of my advocacy has been centered around air pollution, given that I was born and raised in Delhi, and that really personally affected me a lot. And ever since then, I've started several campaigns. Over the past 9 years, I've had the opportunity to work with the UN, EU, several other organizations. And back in 2020, I had the privilege of being recognized by BBC as amongst the foremost youth environmentalists internationally. Currently, I just recently graduated from Ashoka, and I'm looking forward to pursuing a career in sustainability and public policy very soon.
That's so inspiring. Mr. Vaibhav Ramani?
Yeah, I am doing my PhD with the Department of History at Ashoka University, but I'm here representing an organization that I've been volunteering with for the past few years. This organization is a largely voluntary organization. It's the Students for Sea Turtle Conservation Network. It was started about 40 years or so ago, primarily by students, and is one of the only organizations that works with the Forest Department in the conservation of Schedule 1 species under the Wildlife Protection Act. We work with the olive sea turtle species along the coast of the Chennai city. So our volunteers walk around 13 kilometers along two stretches of the beaches of Chennai, monitoring and looking for sea turtle nests and trying to relocate them because of the increased threats owing to human activity and changed human behavior and use of resources and so on in the last few years. So one of the reasons I'm also interested in climate change is also because the lives of sea turtles are directly linked to climate change, and the changing temperature has a direct impact on the sex of the sea turtle hatchlings, and this is something that has sort of been one of my entry points into why our organization also is really invested in climate change and trying to take an active part in trying to be part of the solution. So yeah.
Mr. Ramani, I'm delighted to see how you connect fieldwork to ecology in your work. Ms. Anand, could you please introduce yourself very briefly?
Hi, I'm Shivi. I'm a former Pathwaysian, and I'm currently a student of global geodesign at the University of Southern California. I've been passionate about the environment since I was very young, and I consider myself an example of somebody for whom environmental education has been successful. And I say that because my passion for the environment comes from my schooling, not necessarily from personal experience. Very early on, I was introduced to landfills, the idea of supply chains and how resources are produced, clean energy. And then in grade 6, I watched An Inconvenient Truth, the documentary. And all these experiences made me feel like I could contribute in this space. So I hope to work in sustainability, and my course, it's interdisciplinary, and it combines architecture, public policy, and spatial science to address environmental issues.
Ms. Anand, it's so inspiring to see how education sustainability is such a great passion of yours and how you've explored it. Education sustainability kind of reminds me of a question. Mr. Bhalla, in a problem as global and as rapid as climate change, what impact do you think communities can make on, improving our sustainable behaviors and sustainability in general? And what are you working on that demonstrates this?
Sure. So I want to answer the first question with a quick analogy, right? back in 2020, I think the first year of COVID, we celebrate Diwali in India every year. And I thought, COVID is going on. Maybe people will be bursting a few lesser firecrackers. But the day after Diwali, I woke up and I saw that the headline on the newspaper was 12,000 firecrackers, or 12,000 complaints had been filed. And of course, those were just the reported numbers, so unofficial numbers were much higher. And context to this is that, for the past 5 or 7 years, all the relevant authorities, the National Green Tribunal, the Supreme Court, state governments have banned the sale, purchase, usage of firecrackers. Now, why I mention this example with regard to your question is because this demonstrates the power that, communities, individuals, or societal groups have to sort of address the climate action problem. Today, we are in a catch-22 where individuals and society believe that the burden is not on them, but rather on the government. And on the other hand, we have, in fact, institutions at large. And on the other hand, we have corporates and institutions like governments and, urban local bodies, which say that, there are already XYZ rules and, we've introduced them, but no one's following them. So we're stuck in this vicious cycle, right? Now let's go back to that example, right? If tomorrow there's 12,000 complaints, 12 to 4,000 complaints, what would happen, right? I come from a somewhat pessimistic worldview where I think everyone looks to answer the question, what's in it for me? And our politicians are no different, right? Our politicians and policymakers want to know what's in it for them. And if those 12,000 complaints became 4,000 complaints, so the rational politician, that would mean 8,000 votes. 8,000 votes, if they talk about climate change, water, electricity, energy at large, right? Issues pertaining to climate change. Because that would be individuals and societal groups conveying to our policymakers that, listen, there's been a shift and a change in attitudes, and we actually care about the environment and we want you to work on it. If you look at any political rally today, they'll talk about infrastructure, healthcare. If you're lucky, they'll talk about women's safety. But no one's talking about climate change, right? And that's the answer to your question.
Brings me to your work, Mr. Ramani. You worked a lot with Sea Turtles Association and you've done a lot of field work out there in the open. And I wanted to ask, why do you feel that it's so important to achieve the ideals of justice and equity for non-human species as we do for humans?
Thanks for the question. I mean, it's important because I think we co-inhabit a planet and we share spaces and often unacknowledged, but we do share spaces and we are often dependent on each other. Now, the sea turtles, the olive ridley turtles, for example, are one of the major threats, at least in the coast of Chennai and elsewhere, is trawling and deep sea fishing, with turtles being caught in gill nets and often drowning and so on. But one of the things is also in conservation science, the turtle is known as the keystone species, which like the tiger is seen as the species that can hold the ecosystem together. So you have, let's say, turtles, for instance, a lot of species of turtles, barring the green sea turtle, feed on sea jellies and jellyfish. Now jellyfish in turn will regulate fish populations, and now a healthy fish population means better livelihoods for artisanal fishermen and so on. So the regulation of uncontrolled fishing and trawling is in the best interests of fishermen and other human livelihoods as well. So I think there is a way to think of our futures as parallel futures and not as something that exists outside of each other. And we can sort of think of forms and methods of development that can involve other species, while also not taking the moral high ground and claiming to speak for other animals, because clearly you can't, but you don't have the lived experience of an animal perhaps. But But it is still essential to recognize that we are part of a shared world. Is what I think. Yeah.
I think you talking about coexistence of humanity with the natural world gives me hope, because it allows me to view ourselves as individuals and as, at the end of the day, as beings who are coexisting. So thank you for sharing that perspective. And I'd like all of you, this question goes out to all of you. What advice or what message would you give to anyone who is wanting to be a positive force of change in the world for building hope, enabling change, and tackling on life's challenges? Mr. Bhalla, we could start with you.
So I think for me, it's 2-3 things, right? Whenever I'm talking to young people, my message is be passionate about what you do, and more than that, be authentic, right? Because today, unfortunately, I'm seeing so many young people are starting these social initiatives for maybe 1 year or 2 years, just as unfortunately a CV building exercise to help them get into college, right? But I think when it comes to social and environmental change, it's very important, to actually carry the baton forward and actually stay true to the cause. And of course, I mean, I'm not operating in an unrealistic world. I think social projects are very important. And as long as the job is getting done and people are working for the cause, I'm more than happy. But what's important is that at the very least, if someone's starting a social project or an environmental project in grade 11 or 12, they pass it on to their juniors so that the work carries forward, right? So that's really my message. I think it's very important to know what you're passionate about and then chase that. And I think to be authentic and to stay true to the cause.
I think authenticity, passion, and collaboration are all of the things that kind of bring us again to the idea of hope, and understanding how hope for a sustainable future is kind of built upon you being passionate for environmental change.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you. Mr. Ramani?
Yeah, I agree with everything Abhiir just said, and I have a few things to add. That I feel that in addition, our hope for the future can, like I've said before, stem from our recognition of the rather gloomy situation that we are in, and as a advice or whatever, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to give advice, but as advice, I mean, a lot of students and everybody who's probably listening to this are going to be voters in a few years, and my advice would be to take, your franchise seriously and place demand for serious debates and discussions around climate change, and ensure that it's not relegated to a chapter in your textbooks and an hour of teaching or a day of workshop in your schools, but as an active sort of lens to view your everyday lives and relationships and so on. And in this day and age when we have a lot of heads of states who are unfortunately climate change deniers, your vote can be your seed for change, is what I'd like to say.
I completely agree with the idea that being a global active citizen and understanding and recognizing things around us is essential to building the hope needed to tackle these challenges. So thank you for that perspective. Miss Anand?
As a student, I think, firstly, just discovering your passion, as Abhiir said. And if sustainability is something you're passionate about, there's lots of things you can do as a student in school. One thing that I think has worked really well in my university is creating a space for teachers, students, and administrative staff to collaborate. And it's a space for dialogue, it's a space for plans, it's a space for action. And at my university, we focus on research, on engagement, on operations, on diversity, equity, inclusion, and education. So for research, we're carrying out these funding programs, and we're calling in researchers to use the funds and do interdisciplinary sustainability research. For operations, we're looking at how to make campus more green. So these kinds of things, I think what's essential is a platform, and these things will come out of it, creating a framework and then like creating a way to meet and discuss and do stuff. Secondly, for students, I'd say take every opportunity you can get to focus on what you're passionate about. So in school, if you're assigned a task where you're allowed to choose any topic, and if you're passionate about sustainability, then try and choose that and then make the most of that. I think I was lucky to get chances to do this in school, and in grade 10 and in grade 12, I did projects on trying to live zero waste and then researching the impact of soil on urban flooding. The third thing I'd say is personal action. So this might feel small, but doing little things, many little people doing many little things can create big change. So yes, that's one reason to do little things, but also to make yourself feel like you're contributing.
I think you talking about personal action and the nexus of personal action and creating this framework of foundation for different communities and different stakeholders to contribute and provide their perspective on climate change, justice, and equity. I think such ideas are so pertinent to fostering hope, because when we unite, I think our voices together can help fight for climate change. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Mr. Bhalla, Mr. Ramani, and Ms. Anand, for your insightful views on climate change, justice, and equity. And I think our discussion today has also kind of opened up the different possibilities of hope that are there for a sustainable future, like an educational perspective, a more activist-based perspective, and a more ecological research perspective. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We're honored to have you with us.
Awesome.